So, Jai Hind, everybody. As part of our Thursday lecture series, today we are really fortunate to have Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, whom I had the privilege of knowing. Of course, he may not be remembering that. A thorough professional, and especially his talk today is going to be very, very important to each one of us because the way the geopolitical developments are taking place, including India getting affected, I will not say indirectly, no, indirectly, and that too in a big way. A lot of things are happening, something in favor, something against this thing. So I think it will be very, very interesting, and you will all have the opportunity to interact with him after the lecture is over. I would now request Guru Captain Ashish Gupta to introduce this.
Jai sir. Ambassador Anil Trigunayat has been a professional Indian diplomat for over 3 decades, serving India's national interests across continents from Asia to Africa to Europe and America, including Russia and USA. Prior to his superannuation in the year 2016, he served as India's ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and Malta. He has studied in Agra, Kumayu, and Jawaharlal Nehru University. He also did research work at Oxford University on WTO and regional trading blocs. He is a regular commentator on foreign affairs and a prolific writer. Currently, apart from his association with various think tanks, strategic groups, and Chamber of Commerce and Industries in India and abroad, he is a distinguished fellow with prestigious Vivekananda International Foundation, heading their West Asia. His key areas of interest include West Asia, Africa, and Russia, and serving India's interest in conflict zones. Until recently, he has served as an independent director on the board of WAPCO's, a mini Ratna government company. He is a peace ambassador with Unity Earth, Australia, as well as a Rotarian, serving the society to the extent possible. Interacting and addressing the youth has been his passion. He has been invited by a large number of universities and academic and professional institutions to give talks, including under the Distinguished Lectures Program of Ministry of External Affairs. Apart from penning hundreds of articles, opinion pieces, research papers, and commentaries on foreign policy issues and economic diplomacy in leading magazines and newspapers, he has recently edited a celebrated book on evolving security dynamics in West Asia and India's challenges, published by BIF and Pentagon Press, and is available on Amazon. The second book, West Asian Dynamics and Indian Imperative, was published in the year 2014. So, over to you.
Sir, thank you so much for this kind invitation, and thank you, Captain Ashish, for that introduction. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. Unfortunately, this happens to be my first time. Although I had heard so much about this institute and the kind of work that you are doing, and my compliments to you, sir, for that. Today, I thought that what we will talk about is because we are living through very, very difficult and very distressing times, where the old systems are no longer functional, where you can't predict exactly where we're going to head. And in that kind of a situation, it becomes increasingly difficult for us to craft a sensible, predictable foreign policy. So in that sense, as you must be seeing that a lot of criticism comes our way often, that your foreign policy has failed in your neighborhood, that the Americans are not happy with you, Europeans are not happy with you, the Chinese are aggressors, and Pakistan continues all that. So we have that. So I thought that I'll try to make some sense. So the first part essentially is about the how things are panning out. There are black swan events, they have their impact, and how India has crafted or planning to craft its policy next two decades. That's extremely important for us to know. You know that there is a structural crisis, actually. So the trends are like there is a global churn that is taking place, which we had not seen before 1945, frankly. It's only those two world wars or during that time that it was impossible. But today, thereafter, there was a certain framework which we called as liberal framework. And unfortunately, that particular framework was really not accepted by everybody. But at the same time, this provided a major platform for cooperation among various international actors. United Nations happened to be one of the major ones. And then you had, for the trading and all, World Trade Organization came out after the GATT discussions. Then you have Health Organization, then UNESCO, different kind of organizations came up. You also had Bretton Woods institutions to basically regulate the financial architecture in the world. But that is something that we are seeing all crumbling down someday. Unfortunately, the credit for their crumbling down also is attributable to the very same powers that had started this or established that. It's the United States. As you know that we talk of multilateralism, we talk of multipolarity today, but we have gone through bipolar to unipolar to supposedly multipolar, which we can discuss. But in my view, we are again heading towards a bipolar kind of a world or tripolar. With a different, of course, characteristics, not exactly the same as Cold War 1.0. So we are either going between various orders today. There's no order. You can see it in every single geography. People are doing what they please. Nobody is bothered about UN Security Council resolutions. It is difficult to pass them because of this G3 versus G2. There are five major powers who are the veto wielding powers, and they are aligned. So you have the UK, France, and US on the one side, Russia and China on the other. So wherever there is something directly impinging on their interests or on their surrogates, Israel, for example, then these have no meaning whatsoever. Like the USA has actually vetoed 6 times the stopping of the war in Gaza. And the Israelis do not bother about anything about international law. So at any given time today, there are 4 Gs, as I say. One is the geopolitical contestation, the geo-economic contestation, geo-religious contestation. Mind you, that's something that is not very much discussed, but that's very much present. And the geotechnological contestations going on. And while the global governance is in crisis, we have these across all geographies, either they are being undermined or are being undermined. Multilateral institutions are losing their relevance. They have not been reformed, and unless they are reformed to reflect the realities of the 21st century, more and more countries, including India, will lose faith in them. So at the moment, India, unfortunately, at the 80, UN is the weakest. And if you see an old person also at the 80, does not seem to be that strong. So perhaps we will require some kind of a new model of governance, international and global governance. So that's being talked about. But anyways, this month is the month when we are going to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, and all the countries are going to be present there. And also after 80 years, we are seeing, or rather 48 onwards, 77 years, we'll be seeing a 2-state solution for Palestine conference on September 22nd. Now, for all the powers, unilateralism has always been the preferred mode of conduct of international relations with everybody. Right? Whatever I like. The US Secretary of State has often said that if the United Nations does not serve my foreign policy goals, then it's not relevant to me. So when you come from that kind of a mindset and approach, and you are the largest contributor, today they are not contributing and they are holding back the money. So the United Nations today is unable to function properly also. So that is something that's great. But what we are looking at today is that even the middle powers, not the superpowers, but the middle powers are continuing to do what they want. They don't care. They don't bother about it. They just have one benefactor. And that benefactor tends to support whether it's Russia for Iran or China for Iran, or for that matter, Israel for the US or other countries. So you do what you please. That's the thing. And this also applies to us. We are talking of Indo-Pacific all the time, and we always talk of the rule-based order, free and open Indo-Pacific. But surprisingly, you will see that the United States has not ratified the UNCLOS. So that's a country that is supposed to do that, and we have. And China has ratified it or applies it, but does not follow it. Now, so this is one of the examples. In India also, whenever the US wanted to send its ships, doesn't take a permission or anything. They feel like they said, oh, it's a free water, we go wherever we want. So that's what I'm saying, jungle Raj is prevailing here. And then, of course, President Trump is a disruptionist to the core, and now nobody is able to make head and tail of what he's really bringing about. And he's trying to create some kind of a dysfunctional approach in the international diplomacy. So there are these black swan events I have put, three of them. And then the fourth, we all know that what happened during the pandemic, so I'll not go into detail. But I say what we learned from that. What were the challenges that came about, which I put as 4H? The first one is health, the hunger, habitat, history, and climate change, and the high tech. Then the sustainable development goals, which is extremely important for 80% of the world, have nobody cares about them. There are no funds available. 2030 is unlikely to be completed. And then you have President Trump, as you mentioned, less said the better for him. And his tariff tyranny is already hurting everybody and also, in a way, polarizing the world. Next is nobody thought that there will be a Eurasian war, Russia-Ukraine war. Everybody was wondering that there will be a war in Asia. That is in the Indo-Pacific. But then it happened. And why it happened is, again, a question that we can discuss in the question and answer session if you want to. But I'm going straight. While the COVID impact was still going on, we had this war. This war is how did it started? That the United States blocked USA out of the SWIFT system and confiscated the Western countries $300+ billion of the Russian assets. Now you can imagine if you put money in bank or somewhere else thinking that it is safe. It's exactly like that. A country puts it like that, and that's not allowed, you're not allowed access. So that's called weaponization of the financial instruments. So that undermined the complete confidence in the international banking system. I've been talking to some of the French and others, and they also are worried. It's not only that Russians are worried or worried, but Russians got over it because they were prepared for it from 2014. So what did Russians do? They weaponized the financial, in response, food, fuel, and fertilizers. Now, these have impact on the Western countries, but it has a greater impact, a disproportionate impact on the global South, as we call it. Now, so therefore, this kind of important thing in my personal view is that the US policies have been driven by the deep state, like the Russians by the Slovaki, and they have just been security minded. And that's the reason that they wanted to undermine Russia completely. The Russians have a resilience and they got back. If the US and Russia, it's a premise for you all, US and Russia were to have a better relationship, not a friendly relationship, coexistence somewhat, by like the happened in Cuba and all that. Now that could take care of a lot of deformities in the global order today that are happening. Now this next is Israel-Hamas war, simultaneously 2 years on. One thing that we in the forces know very well, that it's extremely difficult to fight a non-state actor by the conventional forces. And we are seeing it, the most powerful army, the best intelligence, everything in the Middle East. The Israelis are facing their, I would say, anathema for over 2 years, even decimating their economy, decimating everything. But what does it indicate in the policy terms? That there's a defiance of international rules. There's a denial of terror. That there is a, whether it's a state terror or whether it is a terror by the non-state actors, nobody is bothered about it. People are taking sides with that. What Prime Minister Modi said recently at the SCO summit, the double standards must go as far as terrorism is concerned. Then you see disproportionality of this. I tell my Israeli friends often, there were some generals who were visiting also. And I told them, I said, look, I know that you always love to kill 10 for one of yours. That was your reason. But today it has gone 1 to 500, 600 like that. I mean, so to what extent? I said, you were in a very good position and then you lost totally that advantage that you had, sympathy, world sympathy within a very short time. Imagine, of course, we are seeing the destruction all over, not only of the institutions, but the physical destruction that is taking place. And it will have a major issues. Some of the new areas, theaters of competition will be the Sino-US contestation is going nowhere. Even though Trump is trying very hard to work with the Chinese to have some kind of a G2 system between the two countries, try to chart out some kind of a global understanding, it's going to be very difficult, and it became more clearer during the recent SEO summit and thereafter, what the Chinese are doing. It also shows to you one thing for India, I think, is that power only speaks in the international discourse. If you are strong and powerful, you have a global comprehensive power under all determinants, then you can dictate to a great extent the way you want to. If you want to be from a rule taker to rule maker or rule shaper, we need to have economically strong, militarily strong, and internally strong country. That's very important. Now, the Arctic is going to be another very major challenge for the world, and I think Russia and the West will come into that head to head. India has developed some kind of an Arctic strategy in 2021. We are also we are an observer on the Arctic Council, and we have this northern sea route with the Russians. We have worked on the Chennai, Vladivostok, and all that. So we are now trying to work in that direction. Hopefully that will help us. One thing for sure, that the West is definitely on some decline. Now that is, there are several, like you see the various groups that have come up, whether it is BRICS, whether it is SEO, whether it is I2U2, or, so many mini-laterals. Every country has a trilateral. Day before yesterday, there was a meeting with China, Russia, and Mongolia. And there were 4 countries, China, Pakistan, Russia, and Iran. They had a meeting separately. We have our own trilaterals with large number of countries. And so those are becoming increasingly more common as the multilateralism is not able to provide the sufficient. Well, we are looking at, because of the weaponization of financial instruments, de-dollarization is increasingly becoming a possibility, not a reality in the near future. But gradually we are going to see. India, for example, has already signed agreements of the UPI with more than 22 or 23 countries as of last. And that means what? We are transacting in our own national currencies. And recently we issued an order that all the BRICS countries can transact in Indian rupees. So that's also another this kind of a de-dollarization. Russia and China are doing the trade with 92% in yuan and ruble. So you can see Saudi Arabia is now selling oil in yuan. The UAE has become the major, Emirati Riyal has become the major currency for most countries. Today, these countries in the Middle East are playing a very major role. For example, Russia is under more than 16,000 sanctions. But UAE has become the hub for them. So even we are trading for our oil payments through the UAE. So those are the kind of things that's going to create. Trump is always talking that any country doing de-dollarization, he put 100% tariff. Now they have lost relevance. Now what kind of an order we are looking at? What is China looking at? China and Russia said that they believe in multilateralism, but the kind of liberal order that was imposed on the world after 1950 is not. They said by whom for whom. That's the word used by these countries. So they're thinking there should be mutual respect, mutual equality. I doubt very much. For the simple reason because China is as hegemonistic as Soviet Union was or as United States is. So therefore, we'll have to continue to look at these very important things. Now, in the last but one, you see the various plethora of groups. Now, apart from these unilateral, multilateral groups or plurilateral groups, what is most important today? Most countries are trying to sign some kind of a free trade agreement, comprehensive economic partnership agreement, so that they could serve the geo-economic benefits for themselves. Then you have the fight among various connectivity corridors. Connectivity is equally important for culture, for commerce, all kinds of interactions. And so we see that BRI, which is the biggest experiment that they did on the old Silk Route methodology, and they have about 130, 140 countries already committed to that. All countries in our neighborhood except Bhutan, all countries in West Asia, all countries in East Asia, all are part of the BRI. So from our perspective, nearly except us and Bhutan, nearly every country is a part of the BRI. Very often, one thing we have to, as researchers, must know two things, in my view. None of the superpowers has been able to win a single war, win decisively. United States lost in Afghanistan, they lost in Vietnam. China lost in Vietnam. Soviet Union lost in Afghanistan and got disintegrated. So when somebody tells you that we should change our policy and we should have been allied to this or that, see that themselves have not been able to protect themselves. What happened in Afghanistan in the recent times, Taliban to Taliban, full circle, that gives you an indication exactly how. So this is extremely important. Secondly, there is no option for bigger countries who are culturally, civilizationally supreme than becoming self-reliant. That's something. You can't be dependent on any country and expect you to exercise greater influence. If you are, you will be only able to do it at their behest, at their mercy, as long as that serves their national interest. Just look at the European Union countries and US. The Transatlantic Alliance, which everybody vouched for, the NATO, which everybody vouched for, is today also feeling the pinch of one person's destiny. And it always happens in history. Only one leader can change the whole complex. It has happened in the past and it is happening currently. These are some of the, I put the Ds and this is self-explanatory. Only thing I would say, decoupling and de-risking. The global, being a part of the global value supply chains and being a decisive part, you can understand from China. In the 40 years from 1980s onwards, they really reached to the pinnacle of it. Today, they control more than 60 to 70% of the total global supply chains. The whole processing of rare earths, we are thinking of it today. The Chinese have been thinking about it and taking mines in Africa, Congo, and Chile, and everywhere else from donkey's years. So now I have served in Africa and one-third of my career, and everywhere the Chinese are present and controlling the resources. We never thought of critical minerals in the beginning. It's only now we started having these kind of things. So they weren't thought of, Western countries thought that we can decouple from China. They realized very soon they can't decouple. And that's where they said, let's have a de-risking strategy. All these strategies are good, but they will take a very long time. Because that much interdependence, global interdependence or dependencies have been created by these. As far as India is concerned, we always talk of, many of our people you see in the media, that we should hit China, we should do that. We are not in a position to. For your economic prosperity, you are dependent on that. We call ourselves as the pharmacy of the world. 70% of APIs are coming from China. You are talking about the vaccine hub of the world. Large number of it comes from China. Your own industry, whether it is in electronics and rare earths and all, China stopped recently. We had a problem. So we had to discuss this once again, go back to that. So till such time that you have alternate supply chains or your own internal, this thing which we are doing now as far as semiconductors and others are concerned, we will have to continue to collaborate with them. So China remains our major challenge, not only bilaterally, but in every geography. That's also one thing we should keep in mind always, irrespective of the kind of rapprochement we are looking at it today. These are some of the things that climate change has been forgotten. Once again, you have seen the President Trump, the largest polluter, has walked out of it. He talks of maybe drill and whatnot. The financial system is also going through a very major issue. Then the COP30s have become a routine kind of thing. Now 31 will be held there. And the second time President Trump walked out of Paris. That, what does it do? Not only that it takes back the climate change focus, it also tells you that you can't stop others from doing the same. Very simply put. So this is precisely what is happening. And all that happened because of the Russia-Ukraine war also to a great extent. You have the green apartheid, you have the racial apartheid in the beginning. In the middle, you have the vaccine apartheid. I mean, we can talk about it, but this is something. And now we are seeing is tech apartheid or a green apartheid. So this is something not being addressed so far. The major countries in the world have talked about that we will be paying $100 billion a year and all that. Nothing. Hardly any amount of money has been channeled into the developing world. So that's a major problem. Terrorism remains a very major challenge for the world. Double standards continue. Good terrorists versus bad terrorists, my terrorists, your terrorists. Newer challenges in cyber and cryptocurrencies are panning out, which will require greater collaboration with the countries. Food security, we have seen, and not only for countries, developing countries, but we have seen during the pandemic in the United States, there were people were in huge number of big cars standing for food packets distribution. Those are the scenes very limited. So everybody got impacted. Food security is very important. That's why India during its G20 presidency focused on depoliticization of food, fuel, and fertilizer. For us, also very important with 1.4 billion people. Health, of course, everybody did it. President Trump again does not care about WHO. Energy security remains a very major problem for India because we are dependent for 70 to 80% of our imports. And that's where West Asia acquires a much greater significance, strategic significance for India. Not only from the perspective of simple supplies, but also continuing to open the sea lanes of communications. And that's why I say a relationship with West Asia is essentially driven by four E's. That one is energy security, economic engagement, the expats. The expats are 9.5 million people there. Imagine if there is a war there, it expands. What will you do with them? How will you bring up? More importantly, they are sending about 60 to 70 billion dollars every year to India. That money is not hot money like other NRIs. That money is very much stays in India, helps us, and it's about 10% of our total foreign exchange reserves. So we need to have to look at it. And what is our foreign policy? How are we going ahead? And I would only talk from, let's say, 10 years before, because we had our own challenges in the past. Personally, I feel that there is no great change in our foreign policy focus. What has changed is the emphasis on certain dimensions. And I call it as some kind of a result-oriented policy as 3 Rs. That it has become more resilient, it's become more responsive, and it is far more result-oriented. What are we going to achieve? So today we are targeting things. It may not fall as per our plan because other countries are also doing their policy, but you have to anticipate and create responses in that. Now, another thing is that you are trying to understand that you have to use your soft power or civilizational heritage along with your hard power. So that is the beginning that is happening as far as Prime Minister Modi has very rightly put it. We may call it whatever, opportunistic or this, that, strategic autonomy, multi-alignments. All this boils down to mix and match foreign policy. That is something, wherever my interests are served, I'll go and talk to them and do my business with them. And that's very important. We need not. But one thing, let us say, that the criticism comes for India's policy in the neighborhood of. Everybody has a right to choose partners. That's what strategic autonomy is all about, right? So if I have it, why can't I let my neighbors have it? I should be doing more so that they are more invested in me. And that's the approach we need to have, been very realistic. They will come back to you. They can't go anywhere because they're stuck between India and China. So they will straddle along with both, play around with both, be smarter, and try to create problem for you. But we need to be agile, double-footed diplomacy. That is very, very important if we need to go there, because there are going to be much greater challenges. Dr. Jaishankar said something like this, that this is time for us to engage America, manage China, cultivate Europe, reassure Russia, bring Japan into play, draw neighbors in, extend the neighborhood, and expand traditional constituencies. To that, I add that we should today, seeing the complications around and our own interests, it is imperative for us to create an Asia policy rather than having small these groupings, Act East, your Act West, Link West, this, that, all those kind of policies. It's good to have a holistic policy so that you are not number one. If there is one policy not doing that well, you are not criticized, oh, your neighbor first policy has failed. You can have some policies, but it's good to have a larger complex. The things is, of course, Vasudha Kutumbakam is something that has always existed in our, it is the daily work on it. But our policy is basically driven by 4 V's. It is like value-based foreign policy. You have to have certain kind of morality to be shown at least to the public. Yes, we stand for the right. So when you say the dialogue diplomacy is the way, and that's precisely when in Operation Sandhur we got a lot of criticism from the countries or within the country about that, countries. So you tell me anywhere there is a war, India always talks about dialogue and diplomacy. And then whenever the others are talking to us in the same way, why should we treat it in a different parameter? We've got to be realistic. And we must be able to sell it to our people. Friendships are there, but like we have a national interest, other countries also have their own national interest. Nobody wants a war. We don't want a war for next 20 years to get engaged. That was one of the key reasons. You don't want to get dragged like the other countries into a big, long war, whether it's Pakistan or anybody else, because that will take you back 20 years, 30 years of your quest that you are trying to do. So it was a very smart decision to do what they did and stop the war. So that should have given us much more. Then we have, very often we used to hear we want to be Vishwaguru. Personally, I was not that happy with that idea. You can be a guru when people accept you as a guru, but you can be a friend. You can be Bandhu, Vishwabandhu, whatever it is. That's a good thing. And we have shown it during the pandemic, or being the first responder, or like providing people with whatever assistance anybody needs as a HADR. You all know that much better. And then voice of the global south. So that is very important, but developing countries are gradually developing their interest and seeing that India's interests align with theirs. So that's a very, very important thing in my view, and we need to continue to take them along. So in case there is a, let us say tomorrow Cold War 2.2 starts, that will eventually happen. How do I look at it? I look at it that we will have probably a led by China, Russia, or others, and the other one with the United States and the West. But that will be more in a geopolitical. Geoeconomically, we will have several groupings and countries which will provide an alternate geoeconomy. How and where they are going to converge eventually has to be seen. India, I don't see being part of either of the two groups. So I personally feel that possibly we will have an opportunity to lead a group which is called Nations for Strategic Autonomy. Today, nearly every country in the world is looking at the strategic autonomy as a great option. These are some of the our policies. So others have been neighborhood first policy. We talked about it. I think most important thing there is, and I've been to Bangladesh in recent times and I've seen what happened there. It's supposed to be one of our best relationships gone down. The public diplomacy is something that I think we have seen. Public, I went to Bangladesh and I spoke to a large number of my old friends from Muktivani and others in this. Leaders, everybody thought that they were identifying India with a leader, Sheikh Hasina. They said that it is because you are only propping her up. You are not doing anything. Although I told them if we make roads, if we make bridges, it's not for Sheikh Hasina, it's for you. Common people do that. But that is a thing of perception. And that is something that needs to be done. More and more public diplomacy is important, and perceptions need to be managed. That you are not a big bully or a big brother syndrome that all our neighbors suffer. That's very important. And we have made mistakes in the past. Nepal, for example, the blockade of Nepal was totally unwanted. And that till today, because it hurt the common Nepali, not the government. The elites always enjoy their lives, irrespective. So this is something that is till today. Then another thing that has probably put them off is something very close to you all, and that is our this policy, what do you call it? Agniveer policy. Because I met one general there, deputy chief, former deputy chief, Vipin Pandey, and he told me, he says, we have a trilateral agreement we had, in which any changes to Gurkha recruitments had to be discussed. We were not told, it's done. So we have decided to stop. Where have the Gurkhas gone? To Russia, they might go to China, they might go elsewhere. That could be another issue for us, and we'll have to deal with that. China is very strong in all our neighborhoods, so that. West Asia, unfortunately, we a lot of time we continue to say link West. What link West? I mean, they are the most important region for you. I mean, so where is the question? You have to act. So I think that this is something that we have started doing. And I personally feel that during Prime Minister Modi's period, the most successful policy has been with the West Asia. Then Central Asia, Chabahar Port, again, we dilly-dallying for a while, and then now we have started getting back at that. Iranians have not been too happy with us for the simple reason they say that if you buy oil from Russia, saying you have a strategic autonomy, why not buy from us? Or we have used to buy about 12% of our oil from Iran, and some of our refineries are absolutely catering for that. Africa is very important for us. Personally, I feel that after 2050, Africa would be the next destination, whether for human resource or for resources or otherwise, and will be the lead. We have had an ad hoc policy towards Africa for a very long time. We are providing assistance, we are providing, but then I think cogent on cogent. Until 2018, when Prime Minister Modi visited Uganda, and in the parliament in Kampala, he spoke about these 10 guiding principles. The fundamental was that Africa for Africans. Don't the world need to not tell them what they want, but what they want to be. That's precisely what we also did during our G20 presidency. And I think the biggest achievement of our presidency was inclusion of the African Union as a 21st member. Or that was the biggest thing. We need to build upon it and work on. Superpower equations will continue. So far, we have been, as we said, we were in sweet spot. You'll be surprised that strategic autonomy policy was liked by China, also liked by Russia, but not by the United States. They tolerated it, but they were not happy with it. They're not happy with NAM. They're not happy with the strategic autonomy today. And so because they have an alliance mindset, which is very different from our own thinking. Chinese, let us see, I'm glad that we don't think, and not only China, I would say that all relationships, and I'm a realist, should be seen as transactional. There is no love affection attached to it, driven by national interest, driven by short-term, long-term interest, and we need to work from that perspective. Otherwise, we'll have a problem. And you need to have an options also. Pakistan is not going to change, irrespective of what we do. Not because it could have changed, perhaps, if it was not supported by superpowers. All three superpowers continue to support. Today also they have best of relations with all three, including Putin yesterday said they are a very important partner for us in the Afghanistan context. Now we must mull over it. Pakistan is unimportant to a great extent. But let us see what is it that they are able to do. I put it like this, that we Pakistanis are able to encash their nuisance value to their advantage in a very smart manner with everybody. Why, how, this needs to be examined. I have a certain study, but we can talk about it. Afghanistan is good that we are now got back to the Taliban. The whole world is doing it de facto. Why should we not be doing it? It is so important for us, both for our own security and for our access. And this is a rich country as well. And they love, even Taliban, I must tell you, when these Americans were leaving suddenly overnight, our ambassador was approached by Taliban. They said, we don't want India to leave. You continue, we'll provide you the security. We, of course, evacuated and took about 1 hour to get back to them. I was of the opinion, I written about it also. I said, while our planes are going to bring back Indians, let us send a lot of aid to them so that the Afghans feel that we have not abandoned them. That was very important. So now we have started doing it just as they have earthquakes. You can see Indian flags and Indian material. We are the first ones everywhere, including with Turkey. So the last one, this technological excellence. This is something we have not paid a lot of attention to. R&D and everything has been missing, very little locations. And if we don't do that, then whatever sapna we have, we need. Because going forward, it's the technological excellence and supremacy that will decide your place in the global order. So that's going to be something we need to be a little more careful about it. We have a very good diaspora, very successful diaspora. 25, 30 of them had the top multinational companies as well. Two things there. One is that we must learn how to smartly use them, and there should be a long-term strategy and plan. Second is we must not forget that if they are a prime minister of a country or a head of the one organization or the other, for them that country comes first. So irrespective of our information domain, what we do that, and India follows this policy, dialogue, diplomacy, and de-hyphenation, which is very important. This I should stop. Key ideas of India's policy are mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual interests. That is started in the context of China, but applies in all over. Let us see in the reverse manner what should also happen. Even our smaller neighbors in the countries should not be, they should be pandered, soft club, but at the same time, they should not feel that we are princes. So there is a way of doing it, and I think that we should do. 5S is exactly very similar. Now, respond, respect, recognize, reform in the context of global. They have challenges. And I'm very happy that when we took over G20, Prime Minister Modi said personally that I want to meet all the leaders of the global south to tell what they want. I mean, if you were to give it to any agency, even you, anybody can write 500-page what the global south needs. It's not a big deal. The fact that they were invited to talk about the problems and then those issues were plowed back into G20 discussions is a very big issue. We have to be a very major, which we always were, in maritime power. It's very, very strong for us because if we are going to be the net security provider, or we want to be HADR champions, then ocean is the way. That is very important that we need to be there. These are, after a very long time, after NAM actually, India now recently started on some of these very important ISA, International Solar Alliance, the multilateral bodies that were created, coalition of disaster resilient infrastructure, Global Biofuels Alliance, and whatever is One Earth, One Family, all this is part of that thing, Vasudha Kutumbakam that we are talking about, and it goes there. Connectivity now we have started. We were always bilaterally focused relationship. Now we are starting sub-regional and regional groupings. And the I2, U2 and all those are like that. The connectivity corridors, INSTC, International South Transport Corridor, via Chabahar Port to Russia and Europe, and the IMEC via Saudi Arabia and UAE and Israel to Europe. Now that is something that we have started working on. And recently, Prime Minister met for the Kaladan corridor in the east, met the Myanmar chief, and they have given the full control of that port management to us. We have also got the management control of the Chabahar port for 10 years and have agreed to invest about $250 million in that. The thing is that if we don't do that, China is waiting to take. They've already got Guada to take Chabahar. Chinese are very close to the Iranians as well. So Iran, like a civilization country like us, also like to follow a strategic autonomy. That is a good thing for us, so we need to learn to encash that. Secondly, as far as the sanctions regime, which is universal and now not sanctioned by the United Nations are concerned, we must learn how to create sanction immune special purpose vehicles. It's very important. And that if we don't do that, we'll continue to come under problems in various countries. So our policies are pretty much driven by providing everybody a safe comfort zone, basically, shared prosperity. That's this. This is our policy, like connectivity corridors I've already mentioned. India is currently on all the major, so the voice counts. That's the important part. You are part of everything. Whatever you say counts, and that's a good achievement. But that can only be sustained if we develop that comprehensive power. Lastly, I would say that these are some of the things that are very important in this. I want to leave time for questions. That, we have to emerge as an upholder of global goals. That's important. That will be the difference between India and China. You see, in the global south, our biggest competitor is China again. So they come up with a fat checkbook diplomacy. And also at the same time, the debt-driven diplomacy. So that is something the countries are beginning to understand, but the options are limited. I would say that as far as we are concerned, we should try to deliver on our promise. When we say something, when we go to a country, we tell them we want to do this for you, it should be done in the quickest possible time in the most efficient manner. That has been our challenge. That will be the challenge we need to overcome. I'll stop here and I'll take questions.